national debt is now well over $16 trillion. This is the highest national debt in the history of the United States. It has continued to increase at an average of $3.89 billion every day since September 28, 2007. Despite this troubling figure, we continue to hand out billions of dollars every year in foreign aid. Israel is by far the largest recipient of U.S. foreign assistance in the world. And what's more is that according to journalist and executive editor of the Washington Report on Middle East Affairs, Richard Curtis, Israel has never even repaid a loan to the U.S. I argue that U.S. aid to Israel should be stopped or decreased. I'm going to tell you how much of our tax dollars Israel has gotten and continues to get, a few main reasons why Israel in particular should not be receiving this money, and where it should instead be going. So, how much foreign aid does Israel receive from the United States? According to Josh Rubner, co-founder of Jews for Peace in Palestine and Israel, from 1949 to 2008, the U.S. government has provided Israel with more than $103.6 billion of official aid. In 1979 alone, Israel received $4 billion in military aid loans and grants. In 2007, Israel and the United States signed a memorandum of understanding promising Israel $30 billion of U.S. military aid from 2009 to 2018. According to an article in the Jerusalem Post last month, former Israeli Defense Force Commander-in-Chief Gabi Ashkenazi said in the conference that U.S. taxpayers have contributed more to the Israeli defense budget than Israeli taxpayers in the past 3 years. So why should we spend our lives pursuing an education and working hard to provide for another country's defense budget? As our presidential candidates debate on where to cut government spending in order to reduce the national debt, our aid to Israel continues to increase. If our nation's economic hardship is not enough of a reason to cut foreign aid to countries like Israel, here are a few other reasons why the United States should not be funding Israel. First of all, Israel is more financially stable than the United States. Of course, our huge amount of aid does play a role in this, but overall, according to the International Monetary Fund, Israel's economy remains strong. Unemployment in Israel is at its lowest ever, and inflation is very low as well. According to Jewish People Policy Institute President Avinoam Bar Yosef, Israel's economy is in better shape than that of the U.S. at present. Our struggling economy and our record high national debt, which I mentioned earlier, do not put us in a position to pour billions of dollars into other countries, especially countries whose economy is better than our own. The second reason why we should end or decrease aid to Israel is that our unwavering and unconditional support for Israel creates enemies for us in the Middle East. In order to better understand this point, I will give you a brief history of the conflict in the region from a Middle Eastern perspective. So in 1878, European Jews began migrating to what was then known as Palestine, where Christians, Muslims, and Jews had lived together peacefully for centuries. They took over the land through force and a string of violent attacks and created a Jewish homeland and called it Israel. Today, Israel is seen as an enemy throughout the Middle East for its illegal military occupation of the Palestinians and its frequent human rights violations. In a time when national security is a grave concern, we are supporting a country that makes an unstable region like the Middle East resent us. Jesuit priest John Sheehan said it best. He said, "Every time anyone says that Israel is our only friend in the Middle East, I can't help but think that before Israel we had no enemies in the Middle East." This argument that Israel is our only friend in the Middle East has been used multiple times to justify this aid. However, we should look at what kind of friend Israel has been. Israelis have been caught spying on the U.S. multiple times, and classified information has been leaked to Israel on many occasions. According to an article in the Haaretz, some CIA officials have suggested that Israel is our biggest spy threat in the Middle East. Many American citizens have also been killed by Israeli soldiers, such as 23-year-old peace activist Rachel Corrie, who was run over by an Israeli bulldozer in 2003. Not to mention the attack on the USS Liberty ship, in which 34 American soldiers were killed and many more were injured by Israeli soldiers in 1967 while sailing in international waters. It's clear that our alliance with Israel has done more harm for us than good. The final reason I will elaborate on is that the United States was supposedly founded on principles of peace, prosperity, and freedom. We should be a shining example of these principles throughout the world. However, due to our aid to Israel, particularly the military aid, their actions will always reflect on us. Israel has many human rights violations, as well as violations of international law. According to Amnesty International, human rights violations by Israeli forces include home demolitions, punitive arrests, unfair trials, ill treatment and torture of detainees, and the use of excessive or lethal force to subdue nonviolent demonstrations. Infringements on international law include the building of a wall in the Palestinian territories, which cuts through cities like Bethlehem and seriously puts a strain on the lives of the people living there. Expanding Jewish-only settlements and restrictions on the movement of Palestinians with over 600 roadblocks and checkpoints. These are not actions that we as a nation that is supposed to represent freedom and democracy should support and fund. So where should this money go instead? The $30 billion we just promised to Israel could instead go to make care, Social Security, and many other things, and as a result, millions of Americans live in poverty and homelessness. Maybe a portion of these $30 billion could instead go to the Coates family in Florida, who lives in their car in a hospital parking lot. The father guards the car all night as his family sleeps, and the children get ready for school in the hospital bathrooms in the morning. So rather than giving our hard-earned tax dollars to people in Israel who are relatively well off, and use this money to violate human rights and international law, we should use this money at home. In conclusion, according to Fox News analyst Peter Marisi, the United States is heading towards economic collapse. We cannot afford to be handing out billions of dollars every year, particularly not to countries like Israel, whose economy is much better than our own, who create enemies for us in unstable regions, and who undermine our basic founding principles. I argue that we should end or at least decrease aid to countries like Israel and instead use these billions of dollars to rebuild our own nation and focus on the needs of our own citizens.